Hello, my name is Kyung and my project is titled From Rushing to Remembering. In this video, I'll be sharing a synthesis of the two developmental projects. One focused on my own growth in becoming more mindful and grounded, and the other focused on supporting a loved one experiencing memory decline in late adulthood. At first, these seem like two very different challenges. One was about making careless mistakes, because I was always rushing in day-to-day moments. The other was about memory loss and cognitive changes later in life. But through a myriad of developmental theories and approach, I began to see a powerful connection of both issues. The purpose of this video is to explore how attention, memory, and identity are connected across the lifespan, and how understanding these connections can help us better support both ourselves and others. Let's take a look at both of the challenges from my projects. I want to start off with my self-development. The first challenge I explored was my own tendency to rush through tasks, constantly feeling like I needed to be productive. This often led to careless mistakes, not because I didn't understand what to do, but because I wasn't fully present. This is something many people, I believe, can relate to. In a fast-paced world, productivity is often tied to self-worth. Slowing down can feel uncomfortable and even at times anxiety-inducing. In my other development project, the second challenge involved supporting someone during their late adulthood experiencing memory decline. This is also incredibly common with people in this stage of life. As people age, changes in memory, processing speed, and sensory abilities naturally occur. What I realized was that both challenges, whether it's making careless mistakes or memory loss, are connected to how we use attention and process information. This video can help others recognize that whether you're struggling with focus now or supporting someone with memory later, the underlying systems are deeply connected and there are ways to support both. So now that we've taken a look at the two issues on a granular level, let's take a more microscopic look to each one, starting with my self-development project. For myself, I took a look at my past experiences and my culture. My family and I immigrated to the United States when I was just only 5 years old. Growing up in an immigrant family came with some unwanted burdens and expectations of succeeding in a foreign country on behalf of your parents. So all in all, your success equated to their success. As I think through, I think when I was younger, it wasn't as prevalent, but as I moved through life, the constant feeling of go, go, go to be successful and measuring my own success as an indicator of who I am, the completeness or wholeness in my life became evidently a big stressor in my life. I connected these early life experiences to Sigmund Freud's theory that unconscious patterns and past experiences influence present behavior. To be honest, this was the hardest part for me to work through because the issue I always had was being on a constant bypass of rushing through in life because of the feeling of the lack of completeness or wholeness in just sitting in the moment. With this need of constant rushing through life, I realized I was making careless mistakes and that in turn would cause me more stress because it would fill me with disappointment in my own self. Whereas if I took the time to tackle one thing at a time, I wouldn't have made those mistakes. So rather than just thinking about it, thankful to the self-development project, I started to understand my own behavior and reflect through Erikson's psychosocial theory, where family and culture impacts how one perceives or relates to the world. And I realized that I had internalized the idea that being productive equated to self-worth. This created a constant sense of urgency and discomfort with stillness. In many ways, rushing became a coping mechanism to avoid anxiety. So with that in mind, I knew that I wanted to be more mindful. So to ground myself more in the moment and minimize making constant careless mistakes, I incorporated these two strategies: journaling and embedding mindfulness strategies. My journaling would happen at a designated time during the evening and in the same exact spot every day. This was to create a pattern and routine for myself and some accountability measures. My journal entries would consist of a recap of my day, especially highlighting those moments in the day that happened where I made careless mistakes. I also noted which mindfulness method I used during those times. For example, breathing, self-affirmations, or physical stretch breaks. In addition to my journaling, I also created a frequency tracker of how many times I had to incorporate those mindfulness strategies. The purpose of this was to see if over time I was able to decrease the number of times I was actively reminding myself to embed these strategies. And the hope was that me being grounded in the moment was going to become a part of my nature and day-to-day. Surprisingly enough, my results were very positive. I found that through increasing my metacognition, my awareness of my own thinking, I began to shift my inner dialogue and give grace to myself. I became more intentional, more reflective, and more grounded in each present moment. For my other development project, I focused on my own mother, who is in her late adulthood stage and has been dealing with memory decline. To support memory decline, I incorporated some theories from the information processing theory. I focused on strengthening the way information is processed, which are through attention, working memory, and long-term memory. Specifically, I considered the 3 parts of the working memory: the phonological loop, which is associated with language and sound; the visual spatial sketchpad, which is associated with visual information; and the central executive, which is associated with attention control. As I think about my own mother's history, just as culture was a part of my development, it was the same intertwined for my mom. Using Erikson's integrity versus despair theory, I began to see how my mother's personal life experiences and regrets seeped into her sense of fulfillment in life and how it influences not only her emotions, but also the memories she held on to. I noticed my mom bringing up her past more, and in some ways, it felt like she was stuck in the past. For example, she would say things like, "If I didn't choose this back then," or things like, "If we had just stayed in Korea," had made me wonder whether it was nostalgia and acceptance for her, or feeling bitter and sad of where her life is at now. This added a deeper layer. Memory is not just cognitive, it is emotional, cultural, and identity based. Using information processing theory, I translated these ideas into real-world strategies by reducing the cognitive load, strengthening attention, and creating a supportive, culturally inclusive environment. Along with the idea of culture being a part of memory, I also recognize the importance of language, drawing from Chomsky's linguistic theory of language. Being able to communicate clearly, share a language, and engage in conversation help maintain connection, dignity, and emotional well-being. Heavily rooted on the expression that language is innate and how it's an unobservable thing. Therefore, I believe that culture and language is very closely intertwined because it is a part of how one receives information, the input, and expresses information, the output. So with that, I really wanted to base and implement 3 practical strategies to aid my mom in her memory decline and have her feel supported. These strategies help make tasks more automatic, freeing up her mental space for other cognitive processes and keep them culturally relevant. So first, I created simple routines but consistent routines, like her going outside for a walk or going to the gym each and every day to sustain a purpose for her. I had a tracker for her to use to log whether she went for a walk or went to the gym each day of the week for accountability. Second, I utilized sensory cues for visuals and environmental supports. I designated a certain area or container where she could put her keys or loose items so that she keeps it all in one place. I chose the kitchen side counter as the place where it will house her keys and coupons. This was very simply done by buying a little round glass container and putting it on the side counter. I designated the floor next to the counter to be the area for her to drop off her groceries. This consistency of her walking pattern and location was created in hopes that it would free up her memory space for other things. Third, I incorporated memory aids like sticky notes and utilized structured systems like verbal check-ins. I had her stick the sticky note onto her car keys so that she would not forget the list at home or in the car, for example, like grocery lists. The important part here was to stick it onto her car keys because if the sticky note was left on the table or somewhere else, it would get lost. I also made sure to check in with her occasionally throughout the week over the phone to make her feel supported and make her empowered going through this process and support. With that, I really wanted to combine some of the strategies from my self-development and my other development project to strategies you can take away today. First, pause before completing tasks and double check your thinking. You can break your task into smaller, manageable steps. Second, you could write or use visual reminders in your environment. Create and maintain a routine to build automaticity. And lastly, repeat important information out loud to aid memory. Engage in those rich, meaningful conversations to strengthen memory and connection. To summarize, both mindfulness and memory supports are rooted in how we manage attention and process information. Across the lifespan, our challenges may look different, but the underlying systems are deeply connected. Understanding developmental theory allows us to move beyond frustration and toward meaningful practical solutions. As you reflect on this, I encourage you to think about your own experiences. Where might you be rushing and losing focus? Or How might you better support someone experiencing memory challenges? I'd like you to take one strategy from this video and apply it in your daily life. Because when we strengthen our attention, we strengthen our ability to think, remember, and connect. And that impacts not just ourselves, but everyone around us. Thank you, and I hope you enjoyed this presentation.